did you mean? What did you mean when you said love?
Hello. All right, thanks for everyone coming out tonight. If we need more seats, well, I guess we got pallets over there. Yeah, feel free to just grab them off the little track there. Yes, so React ATX, thanks for everyone coming out tonight. Quick. Before we get started, let's do some house rules real quick. All right, and then if I do that. Okay, let me just see if that works. Yes, Capital Factory, house rules real quick. Look around you. If there's any trash at the end of the event, please help clean it up. Capital Factory does provide this for free. Space is expensive here in downtown, so let's keep Capital Factory happy and keep them sponsoring us in this 16th floor beautiful view area. Restrooms are down the hallway, left, right. They're right before the doors. Please do not go through the doors. That's where the startups are, right, and paid working areas. Aside from that, let's just keep this place clean and tidy. And at the end, if I can just get 1 or 2 volunteers to help stack up the chairs really quick before we leave, that'll be great. Capital Factory, if you don't know what Capital Factory is, it is a startup, kind of like accelerator, incubator, work area. They do a bunch of stuff, investors, mentors. If you go to capitalfactory.com/members, highly encourage anyone, curiosity to apply for it. I don't know the price into it, but if you're interested in doing a startup or talking to professionals, investors, right? They call them mentors here, who have, they have over 300 mentors that can help in any regard. You can schedule meetings with them, which is kind of great. You can schedule meetings with them in the offices here or in the meeting rooms, right? So you're thinking about doing entrepreneurship, looking for jobs and startups, right? This is a really great, Capital Factory is a really great resource for that. Our sponsor tonight, Zach Ward from IC Resources. I'm going to come up here and give a quick shout out.
Thanks so much, Roberto. Yeah, thanks for everybody for coming. Thank you to Capital Factory as well. Capital Factory is an amazing, I was actually telling my colleague who's new to the area about Capital Factory. At one point, I actually about a year and a half ago, Capital Factory does a startup crawl and this whole kind of week of networking events. And I think I told Roberto a month or two ago that I ended up coming here trying to network and maybe drum up some business, but ended up walking out of there having invested a significant amount of my personal savings into a company because I was just so excited about what somebody was doing. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so we're IC Resources. It's actually just 3 people here in the U.S. so far. I spent 10 years with another British-based firm such as IC Resources. Unfortunately, they are no longer. So my colleague and I have started our own, I guess, franchise office of IC Resources, which actually is intellectual capital resources, but also a play off of the term integrated circuit, right? So they do a lot in the semiconductor and chip space. Here in Austin, however, I've got about 15 years of web development, software engineering, recruitment experience, and then another 5 years prior to moving to Austin. I lived in the DC and Baltimore area. I think one of the things that I think is most important about the way that I do recruiting is that I really try to embed myself in the community. I've come up with a ton of different little slogans and things like that over the years about keeping things local, and I think it, especially in these kind of more volatile times, I think that local aspect is super important. And I do really want to commend you all for being here. Before I came out, I did a quick LinkedIn search for title of front-end developers with React as a potential keyword search code, and there were over 2,200. Over 1,000 of those people were open to work, which could potentially mean either they're not happy or they are unemployed. Hopefully not. But again, that's 2,200 people, and look, in this room there's probably 35 folks, and I think it ultimately says so much about, I guess, your passion about what you do, and how much you all want to improve yourself. And I think at the end of the day, you all folks, and obviously I'm not downplaying people that weren't able to make it here today, but I think the folks that come out to things like this, that make that extra effort, just makes you that much of a better candidate and that much more of an attractive candidate to folks that are hiring, just to kind of differentiate yourself. So, everybody give yourself a pat on the back. With that said, this is my colleague Paula. I'll let her kind of tell you real quick what she does.
Hey everyone, I'm Paula. As you can tell, the accent's not from around here. I'm from England. I worked at IC Resources for a few years prior. I am in the semiconductor space, which I appreciate is a little different to what everyone does here today. That being said, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you know of anyone. I'm literally doing what Zach does, just in the semi space. That's about it for now. I've only been here for 2 weeks, so I'm just finding my bearings, but good to meet you all.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. And link it with me. I like to put out lots of funny content, so hopefully you guys find it as funny as I do.
Right on. Appreciate that. Thank you. I see resources. All right. I have a consultancy called Web Fountain. I help sponsor this event as well. What I specialize in is API and data operations. So anything specific with API building and data integration. My consultancy specializes in Next, Node, Postgres, Kubernetes, very, very fine-tuned specialty. So if you and your company want to bring me in, bring my team in, let me know. And Webhampton does sponsor the drinks downstairs after the meetup, first round. Great, so getting started. React ATX, we've been around since 2016. I've been hosting it started directly outside the Capital Factory in this building across the street here. Word of mouth. Everything has been a word of mouth, has been organic. So individual developers that come here heard about it through hopefully some colleague. I don't really do a lot of marketing or social media, and so they give you a good, friendly community feel. So if you want to help promote it, please help promote it. That being said, it is community based, so we're always looking for speakers and sponsors. You can reach out at our Twitter handle, email me at meetup@reactatx.org. We do have a webpage called React ATX, which needs some updating. Apologies, but speakers and topics, right? So obviously React ecosystem is huge. I guess nowadays it's a framework. You need some kind of server component, right? And so there's a ton of this confusion associated with client-side development, server-side development, Next.js, Remix, TanStack, you name it. If you're interested in speak and clarify some of this confusion, please let me know. If not, how about some AI, right? AI is all over the place nowadays. How does AI interact with your front-end development workflow? Again, these are just topics. They can be anything short from 10 minutes, 15-minute lightning talks, or something as long as for 45 minutes, a deep dive into what it is that you're trying to convey. It is a huge ecosystem, so let me know. I know there's I've received a couple of emails about questions about certain topics. Nothing's off the table, so shoot me an email. Another forgot to mention little house rules here is parking validation downstairs. If you're in the Omni Hotel parking spot, stick around. We got these tickets. Don't be that individual who forgets and we're downstairs drinking, having a good time, and they need a parking ticket. So just a quick reminder, just let me know, and I'll give a shout out again towards the end to collect your parking tickets. It is expensive if you don't get the parking ticket voucher. Yes, and so after the event, let's continue the conversation. We're gonna go downstairs, directly downstairs. There's a bar downstairs. It's gonna gather there in the first rounds on React ATX. And so another thing the Capital Factory wants us to do is exit here by 8 o'clock. And so we'll probably start around 7:45 to start picking up and clean up. The 8 o'clock curfew is not based on Capital Factory, but on the building itself. So security will let us know time's up, right? All right, so any questions before we get started? Anything, comments? All right, so tonight we have a series of speakers. We got some Playwright testing. We got some SQL Alchemy, React Alchemy, and then we also have our first speaker is Bishop, who will be talking about some React Boilerplate. And he's not from Austin, so let's give him a warm welcome.
You guys hear me at all? No? Check. Check. Is that better? Can you guys hear me if I just talk real loud? Yeah? All right. So sorry, I am from Austin. I live here. I just spend most of my time in Denver. And so I have spoken very regularly at the Denver React group. This is my website. TypeScript is a presentation that I just gave there recently, talking about any and the unknown types. Somewhere down here there's one about React state management. That's another topic that I've presented about a bunch of times. If there's one thing that we say is if you made something, come talk about it. So I made something, and I happened to be in Austin this month, so I was like, hey, I'll pop over and just talk about it real quick. And what I made is just a boilerplate for a React web application. I published it on GitHub, already up to 7 stars, yes. All right, yeah. And so the idea here is that it's a boilerplate. So it goes a little bit beyond what you're gonna get if you use something like Vite or Create Next App or some of these command line tools. They're great at giving you just kind of a starter project, but they give you a starter project just for that one framework. They don't really give you a starter project that includes all the best practices for SEO or API design or these other things. So the idea is to just take one of those starter projects that those CLI tools will give you and then just build it out a little bit more so that it reinforces good organizational patterns or anything like that. So yeah, that was the idea. CSS, accessibility, file organization, API design. So where did I land this year? I've made these boilerplates every couple of years. And down here at the bottom, I included kind of a history of how things have changed over time, all the way from jQuery through Next.js and beyond. And this year I'm very happy to ditch Next.js and ditch Webpack and go strictly with Vite. Vite is amazing. I have hated Webpack for a very long time, just because poor documentation and it works very differently in different places. It's a constant source of problem. So for a build tool this time, Vite set up very quickly and easily. I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah, and still fully with TypeScript, using React as the front end. And I did still go with Redux Toolkit. I know there's been a lot of posts on Reddit about the death of Redux. We don't need it anymore. Now you can do it right in React. And that's true, you can. There's use reducer and context. You can do those things directly in React. And I know that a lot of people like hooks, and hooks are great if you have disparate data sources. This application was designed to have one large state for the application. Like if you have two different list pages, they don't need to know about each other. So you can handle their states separately. But if you have like a game or a large graphical application where the entire application state needs to be used by the entire application, then you need something that's going to help with state management. And while Redux, the things that it does can also be just done with plain React, it provides a simpler syntax. And I thought that syntax was really valuable for large scalable applications. So then on the back end, I did just use Node.js and Express. There's a lot of, as he just mentioned earlier, there's a lot of discussion about server-side rendering versus client-side rendering. I didn't particularly want to get involved. This boilerplate can do either one. I used Vite Express is the actual library that I use to provide Express, and that does both server-side rendering and client-side rendering. So I just installed it up to that point, gave one basic example of client-side rendering with just a simple template engine in Node. And then I wanted to provide a user authentication example. Now I couldn't quite do everything that you need for user authentication because I didn't want to include a database. The database choice is up to you. But I did use passport.js. It takes care of a lot of the legwork of doing a simple user login, logout scenario. And my idea was that this was going to be a local first application. So the React state that's stored in Redux, I put into local storage, but I didn't want it just out there in local storage. Anybody can get access to local storage. That's very easy to get access to. So I encrypted it as it's in local storage so that the application has full access to a persistent state that's always there because it's in local storage, but if someone hacks into your browser, all they get is an encrypted file. They can't figure out how to unencrypt it unless they go through passport.js to log in and get your encryption key. So yeah, a little bit of encryption in there using with local storage, and finally just included ESLint. And I think that there was one more thing that I really wanted to put in the boilerplate, and that was a design system. Because I think every project these days needs to have a design system, even if it's just Bootstrap or Ant Design or any of the other several design systems that are out there. But as I did a lot of research, I found that really every project is going to have project-specific concerns. So the design system isn't something that we can put in a boilerplate. There's no perfect design system for every project. So I did include a separate branch here with Shocker UI where I went ahead and implemented a design system. If you're not sure which one to choose, you can use Chakra. But if you wanted to choose another one, you can use this boilerplate and use whatever design system you want. So that's the basics. There is, of course, how to my reasoning for each of these technologies. Why did I make the choices that I'm making? And what's included. Then add some extra info about choosing a design system, and then a little bit of the history of how these things have changed over time. So that was just what I included. My website here. It's bishopz.com, and that's just the first link there. If you want to check it out, please do. I would love any kind of feedback, particularly if you want to jump in on GitHub under the issues page and just say, like, why did you make this choice? Or, you know, would it have been better to use this other technology? I really want this to be the best collection of all the best practices. So if you have any ideas, please share. And that was pretty much all I had. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Yeah?
You didn't put any testing framework in there.
True.
Is that a choice or?
It is. It's as I've been writing summaries of what I did. You know, I keep thinking, oh, and testing frameworks, and you know, I didn't actually include any. So it's a good idea maybe to add. I think I would add integration. I think unit tests are maybe still up to a choice, but maybe it's better just to have like Jest and Cypress right there at your disposal so you can build on them. It's a great idea. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Did you do anything with
Just in the API. So there's a very simple routing setup set up in Node.js. In the Node files, you can see the source here is divided just client and server. So inside the server files, there's a few Node files there that handle base level routing. When it got to the actual application, no router. Again, there's TanStack, there's React Router, both of them kind of turning into frameworks. It's a very contentious space right now. So that was my thoughts. All right, well, thank you all.
Okay, I got a question right here.
I just had a quick question. I guess, I don't know too much about local first, but it's something I keep hearing more and more about.
Yeah.
What do you, I guess, maybe out of the scope of like your presentation, but like what is the gist behind it?
I mean, it starts with a simple question. What happens when I'm using an application and the internet cuts out? And there are lots of examples of this. The San Francisco, during there was some, I don't know, threat or something. They shut down the internet on the BART. And there's all these Google employees who are like trying to get access to the internet, and none of their apps work. So it's this idea of if we don't have internet, how is the application going to react? And if you're storing something in local storage, the application can continue to work. So local storage or some other kind of local first technology just means that the app keeps working even if the internet shuts off.
Okay, so it uses local storage, and then I've heard like MobX, and is that all, those are like double vendors?
I believe so, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Bishop. What's that? All right, our next speaker is Neel. He'll be talking about some cursor and React, how you use them to build. What is that you build?
It's just a fun little application. I'll tell you all about it. Just a second. Thanks, dude. Oh, I need that, I think.
Like a dongle?
Yeah. Oh, what happened?
It looks like it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Hopefully it works. Let's try. Yeah, it's blank white. Sweet. And then, awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Does it work? Does it work?
I don't know. You know, can everybody hear me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. In the back? Good. All right. Cool. I'll just swing with that. So yeah, my name is Neel. I'm a software.
So it's really cool you actually finished a project. I'm sure most of, if me, has started a bunch of these projects and never finished it. I'm curious, like, do you feel like you started with an appropriate scope, or would you go like higher or lower for your MVP?
I kind of went back and forth on it, honestly. I thought it was a simple enough idea. I think that slide where I was talking about scope creep probably could have not done some of that stuff or not gone as like thorough with it. But I think overall it was a good scope, a well scoped project for what I was trying to experiment with.
Yeah.
And it actually, I feel like, gives me a lot more confidence that I can do something even larger, potentially in a shorter amount of time.
How long did it take to do that first prompt? Like how, like after you hit submit, like.
Oh, like how long did the output?
Yeah.
I don't really remember, but I mean, it wasn't like terribly long. Maybe 10 minutes.
Is there anything you changed about the prompt if you did it again?
The initial prompt, yeah, I probably would have formalized some stuff before the prompt. So I guess what I would have changed is that wouldn't have been the first thing that I would have. I would have set up some ground rules. I would have formalized the docs and things like that before hitting submit.
Have you ever had more like scaffolding projects with like, existing commands like create next or chassis or whatever? But I think if you've done the same thing and put it in phases, because you added enough detail, you had a lot of detail.
Yeah.
AI loves detail, but it can't like remember all those things at once. So like you throw it into phases, like 5, you broke it up into 5 different phases. It's easier. It's kind of the same as like when I submit a PR with 100 files in it. Yeah. Like whoever reviews it is just gonna rubber stamp it, and I'm probably gonna ship bugs. So like if it does like the whole project at once, you're probably not gonna review it, and it's definitely gonna ship bugs. So if you do it in phases, you can kind of check mark each thing and have conversations about it, and iterate it, and then be like, okay, now we're phase 1 is good. Let's go to phase 2.
Yeah, I ended up figuring that out at some point. I didn't have this in the slideshow, but I don't know if you guys definitely can't read that. But this in the bottom right is like an example of what we're talking about. I have this large idea, I just break it up.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Yeah.
How much code review did you do?
Quite a bit.
Well,
I did, but that's just because I'm like, very particular. Okay. But yeah, I mean,
how much did you ask it to change? What it turned out.
Initially a lot, and then slowly less and less. If that makes sense, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like it's been to improve a little bit. I tried to avoid using the word live code. I feel like I wasn't doing that initially. I was really in there. Yeah, especially after the first prompt. But yeah, less and less over time.
Just to play on that, when you initially did the prompting and the AI started working, what was the folder structure that it provided, if you can recall? And was it legit? Like, was it workable?
Yeah, it was legit. It was workable. I think I might be misremembering this. I think it's from another project, but I think the routing was a little messed up in 14 or 15. Does 14 support app routing?
Yeah, I think 13 started app router.
Yeah, so never mind. Yeah, I think it was good. It was like pretty similar to what the whole structure I showed you, or at least the meta.
And you only used Claude. You didn't use any of the other Gemini Pro.
That's a great point. I didn't really talk about that. I used Claude quite a bit. Recently, I've been using Gemini, especially for like large refactors and stuff like that. I don't know if I haven't like measured anything or compared the output, so it just feels better to use. So I don't know if anyone has any insight on that. But I've kind of switched
Yeah, because I was going to ask, because I switched exclusively to Gemini because of that. And to your point about like one large prompt, I've been able to do 5 pages prompts, right? 2 days of writing versus just, scoping it out.
That's within Cursor?
Within Cursor. And so my flow now, I'm not doing UI most of the time. I'm doing like a lot of database management stuff. And so when I talk about like table relationships and foreign keys and how these things match up, and I have a particular mental model, it would take me about, between 2 and 5 pages of prompting, and I would just upload it into like a markdown file, whatever, right, and just feed it and be like, let's get started, right?
Using the max mode or just
Yeah, Gemini Pro Max or whatever it is. And it does a extremely good job on the first try.
Yeah.
Just
I definitely.
Gemini Pro, yeah.
First one is, you mentioned you use Gemini, and anyone else who has used it. I thought I read, and even with the latest Gemini, even though it takes like, I think it's 1 million tokens for context or something, I think I saw that Claude still is better when it comes to code.
It's kind of a vibe thing, but I feel that way, but when you need the really big context, like nothing Claude does can like make up for that. So it's like, you can look at benchmarks and like, oh, this one says it's 59% better at coding or whatever. But you have to you just have to try it, see if it works. If you're doing like that, if you're doing a 5-page prompt, like Claude's not going to get that. Gemini will.
Has anyone else had better luck with Gemini versus Claude when it comes to code? Because I always have like the best luck with Claude.
Not very significant.
Yeah. I think you have to keep it prompt long enough, right? If you just keep a tab open and just use it over and over and over and over again without opening another tab, right? Just technically speaking, you will exhaust obviously your tokens, but you also exhaust the memory of your context. So if you do it long enough, Claude will start saying, or not just Claude, just anything that's not like 1 million tokens, or even Gemini would do it if you keep expanding it. It would just like have memory loss about like what you did at the very beginning. And so you think, but you don't, but the machine does, and then so you start asking it questions, you're like, what the fuck? You did it here, but you can't remember it here, right? And you're like, okay, so something's not working right, so you open a new tab, and then you start over, and it gets refreshed and all that stuff. And
Cursor gives you a little bit of a warning now whenever you're getting to that point, which is nice. Yeah. Also, it's important to note that Cursor does do context window management internally. It's supposed to do it, intelligently or whatever, so it shouldn't do things like that for a while, but sometimes that stuff does happen. And also, I haven't found anything where it tells you exactly how large the context window is with Max. So even if you are using Gemini, I don't know if you're getting 1 million tokens. That's the context window size.
This is for Neel or Shah, or anyone else that see that comment.
I can just a little trick about that context exhaustion. You can just, when you realize that it started, you can just ask in chat, please summarize everything, so I can switch to another window. So for specific reason, and then you switch to another tab with that summarizing, and it works like 90-95% as it should.
Interesting.
Like with ChatGPT, it works like 100% with like a lot of coding inside the chat. It could be tricky. The hint here is to switch to another tab earlier, so that summarizing will be better. Just when you realize that it started, just switch immediately. Not exhausted anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
good tip.
Do you guys integrate testing? Do you testing before you release MVP, or do you implement testing unit testing and web testing after MVP?
So with this project, I've been really bad about that. So the answer is now, but I think that, and I think maybe people have spoken about this before, about doing like test-driven development with this kind of approach.
A lot of startups don't do it, but it is still recommended before you get out of testing or wait until you see your demand for it.
There's a pretty good argument for like MVP that you should, because like for a solopreneur project, you're just doing it on the weekends, trying to get out the door. Like you could really get bogged down.
Writing tests. Yeah.
Like, 'cause there's, okay, which framework do I want to use? Do I want to do just unit tests or component tests or integration or E2E? How much do I mock? Like you can just get. There's a reason that some companies have like a whole person dedicated to that. So for MVP, I would not. Like I would worry about it. Personally, I like testing a lot. So and I like writing small code. So I will write unit tests for specific functions as I go. Like if I write some logic in a function, I just say, hey, write some tests for this. I already use bun so like I just have it write it in bun. So I don't have to set up anything. I can just run unit tests like really quickly like that. It takes 5 seconds to set it up, and now I don't have to test this function for edge cases. But I don't do things like, okay, if I'm using Shah CM, I'm not going to bother component testing that because like that's used by many people. It's just not worth it. And for your UI side, like on an MVP, you just need to make sure that like you're going to be testing it so much that you should have it at least good enough that your user can log in, pay for something, and do the thing that it's made to do. And after that, just wait for user feedback.
Yeah. My plan was to like collect requirements from the testing, and then create like from the user testing, and then create test based.
Yeah, testing should be taken as a strategy, and so you don't. I'm doing a startup right now. There's zero testing except for very few particular things that I know are not going to change. But for the vast majority of the time, the last 18 months, things have changed so much that if I started testing in the very beginning, it would consume all my time just retesting and rewriting this code. And don't get me wrong, like Cursor makes it super easy to write these tests. You can have a rule or something at rule where you can set up multiple agents. Every time you write something, you can switch over to a new tab and be like, hey, write a test for this function, right? And then switch back to whatever you're doing and then check it out later, whatever, right? Make sure you add your integration test or your testing connected so that you can just do PMP build or PMP test, right? But even though it helps you do it faster, because that's initially how I did it, because, oh, wow, yeah, I'll do test-driven development. The thing is, if you don't keep tabs on, if you use this strategy, if you don't keep tabs of your testing, you will have a file called tests, obviously, but it will be just junk. And you'll be testing things that are no longer existing, right? Because you forget to tell Cursor to take out the function because you don't use it anymore because you refactored every single 2 weeks or something like that, right? So it really is a waste of time unless you specifically know for a fact that this particular thing here is not going to change, and it's super important for the user, for the MVP, such that if I ever come back and change it, I know, and I break it, I need to be notified immediately about it, right? So you'd be very selective MVP type of stage. And just an opinion.
Two questions. First, how did it do with the superbase? Like, did it use its generated SDK recruiting database?
Yeah.
What it brings that with?
I thought it went surprisingly well. Like I mentioned, I should have just listened to it. But it did really well. It used the correct, the SDK that you're mentioning. It created a place for migration SQL scripts and stuff like that. But I thought it did really well.
The second question, were you pretty strict about not touching code at all, or was it just natural language all the way?
No, I was in there for sure.
Like, what was the percentage split?
I think, like you asked earlier, yeah, I would probably say, like, in the beginning, I was in there the majority of the time. So I would prompt, and then I would have, a lot of things that I wanted to change. And then over time, the percentage kind of shifted the other way. So probably now I've gotten better at prompting, I get better output, so I'm probably changing maybe 15 to 20% of the code myself.
Go, one more question.
Yeah, so you're going to be making a two-part question. Look at that. So I'll see if I can get one question. So my general question is, how much chatting did you do before you had touch code?
Yeah.
And then sort of second part of that, did you change whether you're using the agent or using one of the other modes when you were chatting, or did you always stay using the agent?
So I always use the agent.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly though.
Like inline and then a tab, maybe?
Like tabs and stuff.
Yeah, well, so you can change it. I mean, you have if you don't have the highest level things, like the agent one can cost more. So if you switch to using a different model, that isn't the agent model, well, you can go over that part. We'll just go to the first question. How much did you chat before you had it touch code? Or do you have it just touch code right away?
That was my first prompt, and I was expecting code out of it.
Okay.
That really large one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe that wasn't the best approach, but yeah, that's.
And you've kept that going as you went on, like you just were always like, do this thing. I mean, I noticed one of your rules was like confirm before changing. That's partly why I asked if you were talking to it a bit more, or were you like, yeah, just go for it, and I'll look what you did.
There was times where I would switch to like chat mode, and so in that case, it's not allowed to.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So if maybe that's what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's what
Yeah. I did that sometimes, but not very often. Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker, it will be talking about E2E testing with Playwright. I forgot the name of the company, Jome? Do you just...
We'd have the test speaker come up right after you just said, tell everybody.
Yeah. We had a little bit of... So we had a small talk about testing, and you left me so little time to talk about that. And that's actually how it works in company that I worked before. People so concentrate on features that usually they forget to test them. So I came here just to talk about and tell my experience with Amazon. I decided to come up with that because I actually didn't see such an experience for front-end developers especially. So that's why I'm here. I want to share my experience. I want to share about Playwright in case you didn't touch it at all. So if you want to try it, you will have I will tell you how to do that. It will be super easy. So who am I? I'm a web developer in the company Zone.com. It's an American company. We sell, I will talk about the next slide. So now it's me. I have 6 years of startup experience. Why I say that? Because when you work in a startup, it's actually influence your startup work, it influence your stack, it influence a lot of things, and it's testing as well. So my current stack, which exists in this company, is Next.js, TypeScript, and Cloud Unit CSS. It doesn't matter in testing perspective, but just with the So what we do, we actually sell houses. So we have a website with inventory, we have a realtors, and we help people buy their new construction homes. So our niche is new construction. So if you want a house, newly built, and no one has lived there before, come to us, we'll help you. This is real people, this is our CEO in the center of the picture, so we will help. So this it's not just advertising, it's just for you to understand that we work on marketplace of something relevant. Yes, so we have houses, we have communities, so it's just a website with everybody. So what we have in our team? So we have 5 front-end developers, 5 back-end developers, and 1 QA. So we have 4 client apps, so it's just not only one website, but a lot of additional stuff. I will talk about like our main app where selling houses actually happening. So what we do with testing, we write unique integration tests using Jest and React test library. But also we handle end-to-end testing with Playwright. And I'm here, we'll be talking in general about testing in our company and also with Playwright. So how come that we, as front-end developers in our team, started to write end-to-end testing? Usually it's the responsibility of QA, or you can also call them as steps, so different titles, but one person. So as a startup, we try to optimize things, as every startup was before, and usually QA resource is very limited. So our startup now, we were talking about early stage startups we do, but sometimes startups come to those stages when every mistake can cost you a lot of money. So we now at that stage when we realize that our fast moving provoke a lot of unexpected behavior, bug, and we cannot do things like we've done before. So we should do something about that. Startup. What I mean by startup culture, if you will work in startup as a developer, you will realize that you cannot be just a developer. You need to scale horizontally. So you need to learn a little bit of backend to your frontend. You need to learn a little bit of frontend to backend. You need to know how to look through analytic tools. You need to know sometimes how to write tasks for yourself based on 3 words in Jira ticket. So it's all about startup culture. So you cannot be just developer. You need to know do a lot of things. So we decided that we have a resource for front-end developers, and why not try them to write in a Playwright? Because at that point when we made this decision, we already had Playwright. We already had Playwright, the instrument that utilized TypeScript. So we were familiar with TypeScript. So we decided let's start with improving that, and then we'll try to write something. So when talking about testing, it's really important to talk about testing pyramid. So what it actually is, it's the approach to testing. There's a lot of types of tests. A lot of people, it's a whole war, whether you should include those types of tests or those. So I just included most basic one that is applicable to front-end. So it's basically unit test, integration test, and end-to-end. So if you work unit test when you just test some small module in isolation, integration test is when you test how they behave together, and end-to-end test is basically when you test using simulating real user experience. So why it is a pyramid? Just because you need to have this approach requires that you should have a lot of unit tests because they are cheap, they are fast. A little bit less integration tests, and you need to have small amount of end-to-end tests. So today I will be talking about end-to-end testing specifically because about unit tests and integration tests, there are a lot of talks, a lot of instruments, but not a lot of the people from front-end development actually write end-to-end. Sorry, I just wanted to do this fast to have a room for questions. So when we talk about Playwright as a tool, you will see 2 packages. So first package, its name is Playwright, and second package is Playwright Test. So what I'm talking about today is Playwright Test. So it's basically framework for writing end-to-end tests. The package with the name Playwright is just a set of tools that you can use to perform some browser automation. So for our purpose to writing tests, we don't need that separately. It's just for other high-level tasks. I was talking about critical flow, blah blah blah. So when is a good idea to write end-to-end tests? What basically should end-to-end test cover and what should not? So for example, if you look at main page, Like every product has some critical flow. So if your product requires registration, registration will be your critical flow. Or, for example, for previous sticker app, I think it's critical creating stickers, payment, and some other things that like your product essentially needs to block. So for our business, it's actually registration. So we have a big, nice quiz, which is like for separate pages. It has different functionality on every step, and then you have registration with the code verification and stuff. So all of this flow should be tested with end-to-end testing because it's critical flow for our business. If we talk about, like, for example, I will return to main page. If you just render like a main page and you want to check like whether it has like correct title, it's not a best candidate for end-to-end test because you can check that with simple unit test if you just check the component vendors and that's all. Yeah, so some other things that maybe not a good candidate. So for example, previously I developed the feature, I cannot show it because I need to create stuff. But actually the feature when you create documents for signing. So maybe you were leasing an apartment or something when you need to sign documents electronically. And we use third-party service which did not provide us the like some sort of a testing key or something, and the only thing that you can test it actually is on production. And we decided not to write end-to-end tests because end-to-end tests are running in different environments, and this test will always fail just because it's impossible to test it on production. So we decided just not to cover it by end-to-end testing, just because like, it's just will be quite old. Yeah. So what happens when you just write npm install Playwright test? Yeah, so basically what it does, downloads a lot of browser versions. So Playwright works with different browsers and with mobile as well. So you can run your test on desktop view and on mobile view and to check whether it's working. So imagine you decided to write a test. How to store them, like where they should read. So we had a path, you know. So firstly, when only our QA was handling that, we had a separate record. Like it was like just separate record. No one didn't know what happened there, and no one didn't know even what we have in testing. And like we decided like, okay, why do we need separate record? Let's have it inside the project, our like main project. So Frontend developers could at least look there, and it would be easier for us and stuff. So we tried that, and then we realized like, okay, why should we have like separate projects to have like a different like packages on? Like let's just have it inside the project as main flow of our development. So now we have them just basically as one folder tests, and there we store files and run them through. So if we talk about testing, you would be surprised, maybe or not, how it's familiar with basic component testing. So when you want to test anything, basic like high-level actions that you actually do. You write code to go to some page, like you write some path or something. You need to find some element there. So for example, if you want to test checkbox or test select or something, you need to find it somehow. So it's like a CSS, you use some sort of selector. You need to do something, so you want to test, yeah, it's a click or fill the form or something else. And then you need to write a code for checking the result. So is everything which you were expecting happening? So how it's like, how you can see it in the code. So this I had on main page, this select. You know, so you choose your city or area where you live, click on the button, and go to the registration flow. So we have a test which has some name. There's a lot of old words like how you should name your test. We will not cover that, but you can read about that. So what I do, I go to the main page. Then I find some element plus do something. So we can find the elements separately, but here we use the chaining, and it's just easily readable. We perform some actions, and then I just check expected results. So when I click on the button with some chosen select, it redirected me to correct URL. So this is very simple test, which is check that everything works. Of course, it's just simple test to show you how it works. But of course, real end-to-end flows will have more steps and more code. So this is what I like to do with every technology is to learn 20 to 80. So to just really learn something and start actually writing. First step is the I recommend. First, Playwright has really good documentation. It's when some tools have a good documentation, it's good and bad because expensive documentation requires reading it, So and there's a lot of things to read. It's sometimes hard with what should we start from. But actually, they have a really great first test tutorial which you can just go through and you understand basically everything that you need to start. So important concept that you should understand in Playwright is locators. Basically, it's a nice word for saying how do you find this element. So my second step is what locator does. So it's basically how to find the element on the page. There's a lot of ways how to find elements on the page. By its ID, by its attribute, by its text, by different stuff. There are a lot of best practices, so you better learn them. Then learn possible actions. So you found element, what can you do then? So basically click, maybe you want to type something in the input, or maybe you want to focus on some element. So all possible actions. This is a link, so you can actually click and it will lead you to the place in documentation. And learn assertions. It's also the fancy word to this piece of code, expect something to do something, so it's assertions. So there's also a different stuff, what can you do with assertions, different tools and stuff. So this is 20 to 80 of Playwright. If you know that, it's easy for you to read tests, it's easy for you to write basic tests, and it's easy for you to navigate other things in Playwright. So when you write something, you need to have some set of guidelines in your head. How do you understand if this approach is good or it's bad? So there's a lot of different tools, but the summary that we use is test what user can see. I mean, when you use all of this fancy stuff, there's a lot of ways how to do that. But instead of writing, for example, find element by its ID, so it's that some developer attribute. You better write find element by text, because this is the element that users see. More advanced approach will be find some element by its role, because that's not only how you test the text, this is an element, but also that this element is do what you want it to do. So for example, if you are looking for the button on the page, you will look for the element with the role button, and then you will find the button, not some random spawn with the same text that you are looking for. So Playwright and end-to-end test can also require you to not test implementation details. What the simplest example, do not write something like when I click on this button, the class of the button changes. It's implementation details. So you test that some attribute that user does not see, you test that it changes. It's implementation details. Forget about that. It's not how we do it. So make it simple. It means just with every test, like try to write clear code without over like abstractions, because as we already agreed with you, everything changes very quickly, and your tests should be readable. They should be easily deleted, and they should be really clear to understand them. Like you can use ChatGPT to please explain me the code, but I hope that it will still try to write the code and we will be understanding without React, you know. Yeah, so, and you can actually reduce testing logic. There's a lot of things that you perform repeatedly, and there's things how to optimize that, but you should do that wisely, and I will show on the next slide as well. Okay, so things that we like all our products, you know, so what things, but I call the things to improve, you know. So things that we need to improve in our like a code base, and I recommend you not to do at all in your code base. So sometimes there are situations when like your page loaded, but the element that you're looking for is not there. It can be, I don't know, for example, like we have a server-side rendering, and some elements render only on the client, and we need to test them. So sometimes, like, there's a ways to wait for the elements, but the most like simple and brutal like approach is just to write wait for timeout. It means wait please 1 second, you know, and it not only just increases the time of the execution, because we actually added 2 seconds to our test just before, because we wanted to, you know, but we didn't have like, I think they had like some particular reason to do that, but usually in 90% of cases you will not do that. Sometimes you just need to read documentation to find other solutions. So we still have that because some things we cannot fix, but we will improve that one. So I was talking about locators, and there is a different functions to use them, and like some guys showed our QA, I don't know, how to look for the XPath of elements in the browser. And they started just to look for that element using XPath, not like by text or by ID or something. And that's created like this kind of like path. And if you look closely, you will eventually understand that it's not the way, because like we can create like we can change layouts all the time. We can optimize that. We decided, I know, we don't need to use div here. We need to use URL here, you know. And maybe it's like the functional will still work, but the test will be failing because there's no such an element that will look like that. So this is one of the worst ways how you can actually write the looking for the element. So we still have 6 of that, and we will eventually remove them. So when I was talking about like reusing the logic, Playwright allows you to create classes, and they call it page object model. So basically every page, they want you to track it as a class and with some elements. So we did that, but we realized that some of the flows, like with this approach, we used that approach for every page that we tested, and we really overcomplicated a lot of things. So some pages are really not so, some pages, some functional, it's not so like extensively repeatable. So we need to create this abstraction, use this class, it still requires like additional like work, you know, and it's not changing anything for good. You just create classes just because it's beautiful, you know. So we decided that page object model we will use just in case if we really have usable logic. For example, one of the most like thing that comes to my mind is logging. So for example, if you need to test something for logged in user, you need to perform a login, and you will just repeatedly logging. It's not also not the best case, but just the simplest one. So if you come across the page of model, remember there's also not a whole wide discussion if this is the best approach for track the repeatable code or not. No, so detail. Also, like our thing that we should improve is we use some of the possibilities of Playwright, but it's actually a great instrument for a lot of things, and we don't use like authentication. So I said, if you want to perform a login, Playwright like have great tools for that, but we just perform login by clicking it, how user would do that. So it's not the best. CodeGen is actually like on the first page, they will show you how to generate tests, not to write them by your hands. So we actually do that by our hands or using some prompts in AI, so we do not use their instrument that they already have. Sharding is also the way to optimize the run. So tests, it's code, it will eventually run, and it will take time. And sharding, it's just way to optimize the run, we don't use that. Also, Playwright has the possibility of components testing, but it's still experimental, that's why we don't use that. And also last thing that I would like to share, like sometimes we, because of this thing that developers do not write the tests and the testers do not actually sometimes communicate with the developers, we tend to ignore bad app design. What does it mean? Sometimes some elements cannot be found by preferable methods. So for example, if you look for some option in select, you will look for the role option with this name. And usually people use some third-party APIs for select, like React Select or something. And not all of them are willing to be really full accessible. And sometimes you really cannot find some element by recommended way. And you can find it by another way, like by ID or by test ID or something. And usually people, when they see that, they're like, okay. But it's, and we tend to ignore that, if the Playwright cannot find your element by accessible role, maybe screen readers also cannot do that, and you just ignore that. So sometimes we just, because we need to do things quickly, we just ignore that. It's not always the case, because recently my team lead said, no, create a bug. What did you do? If it's not working how it's supposed to, please create the bug, and we should fix that. So it's changing that. We still have a lot of things how we do not want to write to find the elements, but we'll fix it. So our main goal for the future is to optimize test runtime. So eventually, when every test will take some time, and eventually you will have 20 minutes, 40 minutes in the CI when you will be waiting for your test to run. It's not only our problem. So I once listened to the podcast with the CTO of a company, and he said, we don't have automation tests, end-to-end tests, because eventually my experience shows that you hire QA will write you some code for end-to-end tests. No one will know what is going on there. 10% of them will be flaky, and eventually it will run for 40, 50 minutes. And because of the flackiness and because of they will take a lot of time, people will just ignore them, and they will just exist. So this is the destiny of almost every a company which try to handle end-to-end tests. We will try to not go that way, but of course we should work on that. Yeah. Also, I wanted to emphasize that Playwright is just a nice tool, but it's not the only tool in the whole quality assurance picture. So there's a lot of how you start previously, it's a strategy, and Playwright and end-to-end testing is just a tool in this strategy. Other things that we do that may be interesting for you, so we don't use code coverage as a decision maker in PRs. So some companies do things like, if your PR decreased the code coverage, like we will not accept this PR. So we don't do that just because we are startup. It's more important for us to make money, to make great features, and some features does not it's not a lot of profit from adding some testing there. So that's why we just don't use it. We plan to integrate it somehow, at least at the discussion. But now we just don't. So as I said before, not all the features will be covered by end-to-end tests. Some of things can be tested easily with unit tests, with integration tests, with other tools. So we also try to be we discovered the instrument, we realized, oh my god, so fancy, so cool, let's write everything with that. But sometimes we need to stop ourselves and say that, okay, this is a test that we can test this actually with a unit test. Why should we create and testing to test some, page or that something changes if it's already can be covered by something else. Also, tests running in a test environment and in production environments, in every environment that we have. And to test stuff, we should have some immutable data, because we have inventory that can be changed, and we agree that some scope of inventory on test environments will never be changed, just for ensure that test does not fail because data change. And also, we do not run every test on every commit, just because it requires a lot of resources. We created a label in GitHub, which will run end-to-end. Usually, we run end-to-end before the merge. So, everybody, code were reviewed, tested, and even before testing. So, every developer decides. But usually, it's not like every commit. It will be just a few times to run this end-to-end test to ensure that we didn't break anything. And also, we have a reporting Slack channel for every app where we have this test. It looks something like that. For every app, we have a separate channel, and it will look like test report for M. So it's just the test environment, preview environment, can be testing environment, can be production. So we have the numbers like how many tests were run, how many tests failed, and how many tests did not run. So this picture actually shows that 121 tests were running, 15 failed, and we have also put the limit. So if 15 tests fail, we do not run any other tests. That's why other tests weren't actually run. So usually it's not the everyday picture, So usually we will have here will be 300 or something. Flaky tests we have 2 or 3 now, and we just skip. I think we have 1 day skip. So yes. So actually that's it. So I was trying to be quick. If you want to receive access to this presentation, please contact me, and also if you have questions, you can ask.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. We have a few minutes for a couple of questions, but go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to get your thoughts. Do you think I should be implementing tests for critical flows, like you said before, MVP?
No, I agree with the previous guys, because you will just, we are our product, we are not on MVP stage. So you better concentrate on things that will bring you value. Have the guys always said, if you are on MVP stage, and you will be checking all the time if something working or not. That's why testing will not, and also MVP I think should not be very big functional. So you won't have an extensive amount of pages, So I don't think that you should implement some extensive testing on the MVP stage. When your product become stable when you realize that because of the bugs you lose money. That is the point of the time when you should think about testing.
A really good time to write tests after you have users, you have a bug. When you patch the bug, write a test for it. It's also the best time to write the test, at least for me, because like if I can write a failing test, then I know I found I've been able to replicate the bug. I can patch the bug, and if the test passes, then I know it's a good test too. And you fix that bug forever.
Not even for like login or onboarding. It's simple, but not even that.
I mean, you're going to test the crap out of it yourself, right?
I mean, if you have think about it, MVP is you have 0 users, right? So like if you get to user 1 and they can't log in, okay, you write a test.
Yeah, right there.
So how long does your test week take to run?
What?
How long does your test week take to run right now?
I think it's 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That's not much.
Go ahead.
So your entire talk gave me some PTSD. Again, you were talking about like the eventual demise of end-to-end testing in these like larger companies, and I feel like one of the reasons that my experience with that problem, it occurred because we weren't running it for every commitment. Because triage became so much of an overhead that people didn't want to do it. They got put on the back burner or whatever. So eventually, all these issues just kind of piled up, and the tests were not useful anymore. So how do you deal with that at your company?
I experienced some of the, there's test fatigue or something. So notification fatigue, I heard this term, when you receive so many notifications that you just ignore them. So we have that. How we deal with that? It's just a discipline. So for now, we don't do anything like specific, like I don't know, ensure something. We just humiliate one another if something went wrong. Yeah. So it's a small team, and everything is working on discipline and trust. Also, there's a scary time now, like layoffs and stuff, so we want to really write it quality. So for us personally, we do not do anything.
Is anyone paying attention to those metrics, like failing tests, or like?
Yes, we have one QA that manages that. And we also have a huge engineering schedule. It's one like during the 1 week, one person dedicates a lot of time to dashboards, to testing, to Sentry, analytic dashboards to look whether we have any like real problems that we need to pay attention to. Because with all of this startup buzz, when we need to bring in all features, we really have a lot of like instruments, a lot of monitoring, but we also need time at someone to actually look at it, analyze, and do something about it. So how we manage that due to engineering. So just I spent less time on the features this week and monitor all the dashboards and write it effectively. So by the way, this week I'm due to engineering and I brought up a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of that's like notification with like badges. What will be the usual flow after receiving the notification? It's like 1, 15.
So usually QA is the one who first reacts. If it's preview end, usually we ignore that, or you put the dev responsible for this preview end. Preview end is just the environment for some feature, and usually dev will write this feature. He will look over. If we talk about production or test environment, usually QA is one who reacts and writes, tags someone in this thread. That's why we actually added it to Slack. It's also really convenient to discuss it in a separate way.
So you have like separation of boundaries between like pages or something, so that QA knows who to tag from developers. Like if like the exact test.
This test around what I was talking about is for front-end code. So API test is separate stuff, and if they were failing, they will write back-end development. And this channel is not for them. It's just only for front-end, for Playwright code.
So anyone from front-end team could look at them and understand what is going on?
Yeah, sometimes it can be the problem of the API, but usually if I found out if you just try to dive into it. But usually it's a front-end role. We just had really lack of back-end resource. That's why we do everything. So.
Thanks.
Got one more question. Yep.
So I used to work at a pretty big company. I used to really team hands like all that thing. So now I'm at a startup the last few months, and now I have to like third end testing, like cyber testing. I guess how does Playwright compare to like other solutions like Cypress?
So actually, I have a for that. I decided not to cover that like extensively, just because I didn't. But I compared a little bit, and Playwright is just, it's more universal and it's more applicable for web applications. So here, like if you want to write me, I will just send you a picture. So from my knowledge, it's just the most modern. It's like, to compare React and, I don't know, Vue.js. So Vue.js is also a nice instrument, but React is more. Because of a bunch of reasons. So for us, when we chose Playwright, we use that because it's on JavaScript. You can write it with JavaScript, with TypeScript, and also if you use React test library and Jest, you will eventually see that their APIs are almost identical. So you just write the test, and like I promise you, I thought it is the test from my Jest, from my React components testing, but it's Playwright. So, and if you already work with some React test library, for example, or you're a React developer, Playwright will be just more easy, at least for me. But I cannot be completely sure just because I didn't test all this instrument by hand.
And then you also mentioned like you all test the product. You all test it locally or test on staging?
Great. Thank you so much, Iryna.
Thank you.
A quick thank you to our sponsors, IC Resources, for coming out tonight. Thanks for the pizzas and booze. There's some swag. Yeah. Thanks to Bishop. Thanks, Iryna. Bishop, thanks for coming down to Austin, all the way from Denver. Neel, thanks a lot for presenting as well. Let's keep the conversation going. If you meet us downstairs at the bar, first round is on React ATX. Thanks so much. Very quick, everybody, validation tickets. Validation tickets. Don't forget them.
Yeah, fine. Is someone see the partner here? Oh. She should be downstairs.